our Week 9 review as the NFL has now reached officially its halfway stage. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and I'm this week joined by a returning guest. You'd have seen him on our Cleveland Browns season preview, part of Dynasty Nerds, Browns fan, Dan Toomey. Dan, first of all, how are things? How are you?
Great, Andy. We're a little bit past the halfway point of the season, and I feel like it's flying along. We're going to be at the NFL draft in Detroit before we know it, but there's still a lot of things to talk about till we get there.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's because I'm getting older, but it just seems like this season has flown by. I've never seen a season fly by as quick as this in my life. It's been just a crazy, just how it feels like yesterday. Even I was talking to you during the Brown season preview, and now it's like, oh, we're actually now in November. I'm seeing Christmas lights, which is for me way too early. I'm seeing Christmas lights in my town. I'm seeing Christmas adverts now, Christmas songs. It's just me. It's going by for a season that is compared to other sports so short, far too quickly for my liking. But either way, I think it's been a good season so far. I think there's not been maybe as many crazy games as last year before that. But I think overall it's been it's been good, enjoyable as ever.
Yeah, and this week was probably one of the most interesting weeks. We had a number of backup quarterbacks. We had a running back kick a field goal. Like things are all over the place in the NFL in week 9.
Absolutely. And it started off on Thursday night as Tennessee went down in Pittsburgh to the Steelers by 20 points 16. And then heading on to Sunday in the early game, which is our first talking point, is in Germany, a game that I sadly couldn't be involved in. But either way, I was unwell, so I wouldn't be able to go anyway. But it was in Germany as the Chiefs hosted the Dolphins in Frankfurt as the Chiefs beat the Dolphins 21-14. The Chiefs did lead 21-0 at half time before touchdowns from Cedric Wilson and Raheem Mostert got the Dolphins back into the game before ultimately a botched snap from centre Connor Williams caused two to find the ball on fourth down and sealed the game for the Chiefs. But the one thing I want to talk about mainly was about the what ended up being a game-winning play. End of the second quarter, Tyreek Hill fumbled the ball, and then the Chiefs go in via lateral play for a defensive touchdown. Now, for you, Dan, this has been what 9 a.m., 10 a.m. for you back over in New York, your end.
Yeah,
Um,
not 9 a.m. start for us. My
so
wife and I were actually at the diner having breakfast watching the game. Is wonderful.
nice. I mean, what obviously we have. I'll get onto the play in a second, but we have, we love having these games on early our time, but obviously we're not experiencing what it's like for you guys. And I'll be getting that next week when I'm in Vegas. But for you, it's like, what's it like having these games on so early in the morning?
Um, it's great, but it's also a double-edged sword because you got the wife and she wants to run errands in the morning, and you're like, hold up, there's actually a football game. She's like, why is there a football game so early? And the other thing you gotta think about is people living in Kansas City. For them, it was, I believe, a 8 a.m., maybe at a 7 a.m. start. So when you get those West Coast or Midwest teams playing over there, it's tough on the fan base. But I never mind having football from sun up to sundown on a Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I said he was complaining. I mean, keep in like Hawaii, for example, right now it's currently, I think they're 10 hours behind us. In the UK, so that'll be what 5 hours behind you. So that would be for them around, I think, two in
Three,
the morning.
yeah, 3 a.m.
3 a.m. So that's tough for them if you're living in Hawaii and even West Coast. I mean, it's tough, but the other day we have to go through watching games till 4 in the morning. So
Yeah, you guys do it every week. We could do it once in a while.
exactly. Um, but yeah, your thoughts on the play because that was one of the crazy defensive plays I've seen in the last few years. I thought it was really, really good improvisation from the Chiefs to do that, and I think that ultimately, even though it came across my own team, I can't deny just how good of a play that was from the Chiefs.
Yeah, Patrick said this during his post game presser, but obviously, I think we all agree with at this point. This is the best Chiefs defense that has played with Patrick during his career, which comes at a perfect time because the offense is definitely on the downside of things. Now, that being said, it's a Patrick Mahomes led offense, so I'm never going to write them off because he can make, magic out of mud. But this is definitely the best defense that he's had. And it's interesting to see this Kansas City team win in a much different way than they have in the past. That being said, Miami was right in it. I know you're a Dolphins fan. It's a heartbreaker to hear that, but obviously the one fumble return touchdown was the big difference. But if you dive deeper into the stat lines, Miami was able to contain Travis Kelce, which not a lot of teams have been able to do this year or even in years past. So I am very much looking forward to a potential playoff rematch between these two teams. And I think, if the coin just flipped the other way or the wind blew the other way or just like luck landed in a different direction, we might be sitting here talking about the Miami Dolphins as, a potential number one seed in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, I do sadly think we may find it hard now to get number one two because not only did Chiefs have one win on us, but they also have that tiebreaker if it came to that point. And I still, we haven't been a winning team since week 3 last year, so that for me, and now that we aren't going to really be able to fix until we start beating teams like that. So, but at the same time, I've just talked about it in another podcast. You don't win or lose Super Bowls in November. So for me, it's a good learning curve. Going forward, and the Chiefs, we gave them a good game. I remember we even gave him a good game in the 2020 season. I think we gave Mahomes one of his toughest games, and again we gave him a tough game this time around. But like like any good team, they'll punch you when they need to, and as you say, it's the best defense I've ever seen the Chiefs have, and I think that's going to really help Mahomes kind of playoffs because there's going to be a time where I think it's coming. I think it's coming in the next year or two. Even this season, you could argue Kelsey's going to drop down, and eventually he's 35 right now. He's going to get, and I would certainly, I know you like your fancy, I would certainly not pick him up in the Dynasty League anytime soon. I think that the decline is coming. I think he is definitely showing some signs of decline. I don't think he's quite been the same as he has in years gone by, although he's still got 538 yards this season. So at some point, he's going to have to rely on that defense to winning games. I think it's a perfect time. He's got a lot of good young defensive players on that team. So for me, it's it's a good time for the Chiefs. And I still think until they're beaten, I think they're the team to beat in the AFC. Really good performance, and I think we've seen it with the London games, Bills especially. These teams have come in late, trying to avoid jet lag. They often struggle. When the Bills struggled, the Titans struggled with it. The Falcons did struggle as well. I don't think they came as early, but they still struggled. But the Chiefs just looked straight away on it. They didn't look tired at all. And I think obviously second half they showed it a little bit. Obviously they were shut out in the second half, but I think that was only because they were so far ahead and they sort of took their foot off the gas. I think if they'd gone to that half, 21-14 up, or they'd gone to that half 14-7 or 14-10 up, I think we see a different Chiefs second half. I think because they felt they could afford to sort of to do that and be more cautious and take their foot off the gas. I think that ultimately helped us, but it was good for me to see our defense play well because really it hasn't played well all year. But it was our first game where we had Howard and Ramsey playing on the same team, so that was good to see. So it gives me confidence. I just wish one game both sides of the ball turn up. It seems to be one or the other at the moment. But I think for me, I've never seen us go 6-3, never seen us go 5-1. So for me, it's the best start I've ever seen us have. And I think it's just good to be involved in these kind of conversations and these sort of games where you are fighting for a number one seed. And I think that I believe a fourth now because of the Ravens result and the Jags having less losses. So for me, if you told me to start the year, come week 10, you'd be 6-3 on a bye week, top of the AFC East by a game, and you'd be the 4th seed. I'd take it out in a heartbeat. So can't complain too much. And I think that, hopefully we can learn this. I think we'll have to play either the Chiefs or the Bills, who we've lost to already in the playoffs. I think it'll come down to that, or maybe the Bengals. And I think ultimately we'll learn from these games and hopefully be able to perform well because we know that on our day, this team could beat anyone. I mean, to put 70 points up against any team is pretty good. So for me, yeah, definitely positive signs, but definitely room for improvement. Now, other results came on the weekend. So 6 p.m. slate in the UK, that would be 1 p.m. Eastern. That will be other games involving the Cleveland Browns thrashing the Cardinals by 27 points to 0. The Packers beating the Rams 20 points to 3. The Commanders beating the Patriots 20 points to 17. And the Saints beating the Bears 24 points to 17. And the Ravens beating the Seahawks 27 points to 3. But 2 games that happened at 6 p.m. that I want to talk about. First up with a game that friend of the show, Rob Monk, went to. His first ever Falcons game in Atlanta to see his team play at home. They lost in a thriller to the Vikings, 31-28. Of course, the game dominated by Josh Dobbs, who only joined the team midweek after the Kirk Cousins injury. He joined on the trade deadline, had a handful of days to learn had 3 fumbles, but ultimately came away with the win and had a rushing touchdown as well, a couple of touchdowns. Don't think he threw for a pick. He may have, and he made that. I don't know, but either way, it was a positive for them. It was a great performance for Josh Dobbs and a real good moment for him because he is a guy that was playing on a really bad team, and it was his 5th team since week 14 last year. Had a lot of teams, and he's been in and out of teams throughout his whole career. This felt like his chance to show that he can play on a good team, and Danny's won 4 games in a row, all of them without Justin Jefferson. Got to give Vikings a huge amount of credit in what was a excellent win, an excellent game.
Yeah. Josh Dobbs, he is a AFC North staple, spending so many years in the Steelers and then on and off the Browns roster 2 times. This game was insane just because when you step back from the big picture and you look at the smaller picture of a football game, this guy is coming in, off the street. Kevin O'Connell didn't have him take any practice reps with the offense during the week last week. And then you lose Jaron Hall very quickly into the series. And they even had Cam Akers was their emergency quarterback, and he left the game. Unfortunately, he tore another Achilles in an opposite knee. But like just so many little things that Josh Dobbs and Kevin O'Connell had to get right throughout the course of the game. If you're not even looking at the performance or the win or anything, just like, cadences, snap counts, options, how to get calls in, before the 15-second cutoff is, it's just like, it was a amazing display of just going back to the basics with football and just getting the little things right. And, if you put enough little things together that are right, you get something like this where it's a great, a great big thing. We joke, Josh Dobbs, he went to Tennessee and, he studied aerospace engineering and he's, the rocket scientist guy, but he is a very bright, intelligent person, as you can see, able to pick up, the playbook and everything basically on the fly on Sunday. So this is definitely a game I have scheduled to go back and watch again because just there's so much things that we can learn from, analysts who are outside of the league just by watching the way all these players interacted on Sunday, picking up on how things really do work on the, inner workings of this offense.
Yeah, and you have to give Josh Dobbs huge credit because we always hear about it. Every game he plays, we always seem to hear about his aeronautical engineering stuff. But clearly, for doing that, you've got to be a clever guy, and he obviously the reason why he has been on 5 teams in a year. But at the same time, there's a reason why his team's picking him up because I imagine it's a league where it's a word of mouth league where they probably got loads of recommendations. A bit like you get like references and jobs. It's probably got a lot of head coaches that could probably vouch for Josh Dobbs and just how quick he can probably learn the playbook. So, and I think it proved that. I think he had a really tough start. I think he had a few fumbles and a few problems, but he just seemed to flick a switch like that, and it just seemed to completely change the game. And ultimately, obviously he was rushing leader as well with 66 yards. So yeah, he did it on both ends and both sides of the ball in terms of both running it and throwing it. And ultimately, I think that's a really good win for him. And I think that the Vikings are rolling and they're currently in the playoffs as it stands. And I think I've not looked at their schedule, but I can see him getting a. I don't think they'll catch up with the Lions, but I think they'll certainly be a team that will be fighting for one of the wildcard spots and probably will on current form. Probably do it because they now get Jefferson back when he's back from injury, and Madison. I like seeing him sort of lining up in that sort of receiver position and getting a touchdown that way, and obviously doing a lot in the run game as well. So for me, the Vikings are secretly going about things the right way, and I think they could be a team that after a 1-4 start, and you lose Justin Jefferson to go on this kind of run, you've got to commend them. But on the flip side, the Falcons. The main takeaway from this was, first of all. Johnny Smith, tight end, had the most receiving yards in the entire game with 100, exactly 100. But you trade up for a running back who's got as much hype as Bijan Robinson, and I like Tyler Algier. But Dan, why is Tyler Algier getting more reps and more snaps than Bijan Robinson, the guy you picked in top 10 pick, and for a position that's been so devalued, it's a risk taking a running back that high. So to not even play him as much as you other guys, it just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, I don't know what Arthur Smith is doing over there in Atlanta. It's just it's very weird. It's like almost like there's a big disconnect between the front office and general manager and the coaching staff. Almost like like a rivalry, like hatred type thing. Like, oh, you're going to take these players so high. Well, guess what? I'm not going to use them. So it'll be interesting to see when one half of that equation gets fired, what the other half has to say about them on their. I don't imagine the exit interview is going to go very swimmingly because, you got Kyle Pitts had 5 targets on Sunday. Guess what? Jono Smith and Kadero Hodge had more targets than Kyle Pitts, who also is another top 10 pick on this offense. Drake London was out for this game, but I have to imagine that he wouldn't have had as many targets as freaking Jono Smith did. So it's a big misuse of talent in Atlanta. And then you bench Desmond Ritter, you bring in Taylor Heineke, who, guess what? He kind of just looked like Desmond Ritter all over again. It's like you have a clone of the same person going back and forth between the two. So, I mean, it's a shame because there's a lot of talented pieces on this Atlanta team. I know in preseason, I picked them as my dark horse to win the NFC South, and Arthur Smith is just making me eat my sock at this point with this record.
Yeah, I agree because I think you look at the fact that the quarterback situation isn't pretty there, but I think with Robert Saleh, he's got the same problem. But I think because he's actually coaching well, he will have that get out of jail free card on his third season. And Smith, for me, I think did a great job, especially last year. I think he did a great job in his first 2 years. But this year, you can blame quarterbacks all he wants, but as you said, there's been a lot of coaching decisions he's made that hasn't been quite right and have been a bit questionable with, I think, the mentioned Robertson thing. And even Drake London week 1 didn't get, I think, a single target in this game in that first week. So been a lot of weird decisions. And I think that the third year is often for a coach, that time when they do suffer the fate on Black Monday. And whilst, he has got the excuse of having bad quarterbacks, he's still making the decisions that he's making and not giving certain players enough targets. And Kyle Pitts, hasn't really done it the first 3 years, and that probably is down to Arthur Smith, if I'm honest. So, yeah, a lot of questions there, and I'm intrigued to see what will happen. And Rob, if you are listening to this podcast, I will message you later on today, but hope you had a good time in Atlanta and hope you enjoyed your first game at the stadium, which, hopefully is a better atmosphere than I had when I went there. Other game at 6 p.m. I want to discuss was, I think, by far, no, probably definitely the game of the week. Texans, Buccaneers, as the Texans won 39-37 in a great duel between Baker Mayfield and CJ Stroud. A first overall pick and second overall pick in, obviously 6 years apart. But for me, I really want to talk about one thing only, and that's CJ Stroud. I mean, 5 touchdowns, 0 picks, only 1 interception the whole year, 475 yards, I think it was as well. I mean, for you, Dan, is he the most exciting quarterback in their rookie year, or first year starting, I should say, since Mahomes? Because for me, a lot of quarterbacks struggle in their first year starting. Even Joe Burrow, he had signs, but he got injured early on. And, a lot of quarterbacks, Tua struggled, Josh Allen struggled, Jalen Hurts struggled. But I've never seen, literally, since Mahomes first started for the Chiefs, anything like this. And every game, he's thrown touchdowns. He's not as if he's going games, he's got like 150 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 picks. He's putting up touchdown after touchdown. And this game especially, where I think was, for me, the game where I think the whole league is on notice now that CJ Stroud, he is that guy.
Yeah. So working in the industry for a couple of years, I have hands in many different areas, but I have to say my favorite area is the NFL draft, scouting, and player analysis. And the one big question going to the draft last year was what to do with CJ Stroud. He comes from Ohio State, a prestigious program. And then everyone's like, oh, look at his receiver core throughout the year. Marvin Harrison Jr., Mecca Buka, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, like all, first round players. And then you look at his final season at Ohio State, not the best. And then there was that Georgia game where he went off in the college football playoffs. That was the last time we saw him on the field. And I left just saying, what version of CJ Stroud are we going to get at the next level? And as you saw in the draft, Bryce Young was a consensus #1 overall pick. CJ Stroud went right behind him. And then, we entered the season. Now we're sitting here, 8 months later, and now we have to reassess our priors. We have to say, what did we get wrong? And why didn't we put faith in that Georgia game being the CJ Stroud that we're going to get in the NFL? Because on the flip side, I'm not saying Bryce Young has been like a disaster or terrible or anything, but I guarantee you something. If the Panthers could go back and do the #1 overall pick again, we would see CJ Stroud in Carolina blue and not Bryce Young. So It's wonderful because with draft analysis, you can always go back in different sects of time, say, oh, I was right, oh, I was wrong, this and that. But it's the trends that you want to look into for your overall player analysis. And the trend right now is that CJ Stroud should have been the number one overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft and not Bryce Young. And it was an amazing performance by him. I'm very happy for him because I know he's caught a lot of criticism, especially last year in college football. And now, he seems to be putting in the hard work and reaping the rewards, and kind of like everything that was a knock on him, whether it was like, speed going through his progressions, whether his ability to read the defense, like these are all things that he has obviously worked on and has improved upon, which is just wonderful to see.
Yeah, I mean, we did a mock draft. And I did say I preferred him to Bryce Young, but I did say I didn't like any of the quarterbacks coming out of the draft that year. And what he's done so far is just prove everyone wrong. And really look at even further than just this year. I think you look at the Panthers and think, if they waited just one more year, they could have got Caleb Williams. Because right now, obviously last year they got the first pick through the Bears, and now because of that trade, the Bears are going to get the first pick because of their record. So you think as well they might look further up. Not only did they pass on Stroud to get Young, they may also go in a few years. They waited a year too. They did it a year too early, and they could have waited a year and got Caleb Williams next year. Because I guarantee, if they had like a Kyle Allen like they had before, or if they had Andy Dalton, they probably would be. Actually, maybe not Dalton. He gets you probably 4 or 5 wins. But if they'd had another year being bad, they could have gone out and got Caleb Williams. But now they're stuck because they haven't got the pick because of the Bears trade. They're going to be stuck with this sort of team, and I do fear for Frank Reich because he's going to be probably a victim list because he's already good experienced head coach. He might be one and done because he hasn't got that excuse of being a first-time head coach. So, yeah, worrying times there. But for the Texans, what I loved as well in this game is that you had 3 players with over 100 yards in this game. Noah Brown, 153 yards, 1 touchdown. Dalton Schultz, 130 yards, 1 touchdown. Tank Dell, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then Nico Collins got a touchdown as well with 54 yards. So everyone's sort of getting involved. It's a bit like, the Jag you're seeing, ETN, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Engram all getting involved. I think we're seeing the same thing here with Texans, seeing different guys each week coming up and doing these things. I think it's a really exciting team because this team, I think some thought they might be a bit of a dark horse wildcard team, but no one thought they'd be even competing for a playoff spot. And I think they could do it. And only 1 win behind the Bengals, who are the 7th seed at the moment. They could do it, and I think they got the team for it. And I think D'Amico Ryans has been, I think for me, Stroud is for me the favourite right now for Rookie of the Year. I think if you look at Rookie Coaches of the Year, I think D'Amico Ryans has that locked in right now. I can't see anyone else doing a better job than him right now. So Texans, I think, are a really good place. I think the whole Watson thing really screwed him over because he was their franchise quarterback. He was brilliant, got the most yards in the league with a 4-win record. Obviously, that thing happened to your guys' benefit. Well, maybe not. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but yeah,
no comment right now.
But yeah, for a year or two, it was pretty much like awful to watch. But now they're a team you actually like Sunday mornings or Sunday afternoons go on Red Zone. Actually, you want to watch them play and you want to watch CJ Stroud play. And I think, yeah, really, really exciting team. But the Buccaneers, I don't think could be too disheartened. I mean, they've had back-to-back weeks now where they've gone toe-to-toe with good quarterbacks in Josh Allen and CJ Stroud. And once again, they come up short. And I think that whilst they lost, Baker Mayfield had 2 touchdowns, no picks, 265 yards. The run game wasn't great, but Mike Evans and Cade Otton were the lead receivers. Excuse me. So yeah, I think they've had some tough losses, but have played really well. So I think Baker has certainly silenced a lot of his haters this season with how he's played.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, being a Cleveland Browns fan, I'm very invested into the Baker Mayfield experience. And, I loved Baker, and I didn't want to see the Browns get rid of him. So I do root for him on Sundays. I love seeing Baker and the Buccaneers do well right now. Thankfully, he's in the other conference, a different division. So, it's not really affecting my season too much. So I can happily root for Baker on Sundays because say what you think about him. At the end of the day, the guy's fun to watch. He's going to go out there. He's going to force the throws, kind of like, Brett Favre. some of these throws are going to look great and some of these throws are going to look, completely boneheaded. But, he'll have a soundbite or two after the game. It's fun football when Baker Mayfield's involved. And this Tampa Bay team, I don't really know what to think about it. They're in there most of the games. They're fighting. They haven't really got blown out too much this season. But what you said earlier in this segment, you're like, oh, game of the week, Buccaneers and Texans. Go back 2 months ago. Would we be sitting here saying game of the week, Buccaneers Texans? No, we'd probably be saying like, okay, this is the battle for the number one overall pick. So it's so nice to see these two teams just prove us wrong and go above and beyond with their expectations for this year.
Yeah, and I think I said it before. This is why we love the sport because you can never tell, even before a game or before a season starts, at all what's going to happen. I mean, you look at the season. I had Panthers winning the division. Look how that's turned out, and people thought the Bears were dark horse. I think everyone knew the Cardinals would be bad, but on the flip side, you look at the Buccaneers and the Texans, particularly the Buccaneers. No one thought they'd be where they are now and playing where they are. I know the record doesn't suggest it, but they've been good despite the losses. So for me, it's why we love the sport. I mean, it's just every week it's unpredictable. Every season changes all the time. It's a brilliant sport, and this is why we love it because there's no other sport like it where it can change that quickly. Moving on to the later slates in the NFL. So the first one was talking to the Panthers. They, despite winning last week, they got back to losing ways where they lost to the Indianapolis Colts with the player of the game being Kenny Moore. 2 pick sixes in the same game for a total of 115 yards as they ended up winning by 27 points to 13. The Raiders Giants was a 30-6 win for the Raiders in one of the least exciting games of the week. And then on Sunday Night Football, the Bengals beat the Buffalo Bills by 24 points to 18. And last night, or this morning for us UK fans, the Chargers beat the Jets 27-6. But our final game is, I think it rivals Texans Bucks game of the week. It's an NFC East game between the Eagles and the Cowboys, as the Eagles came away winners 28-23 to go 8-1, the best record in the NFL at the moment. The only team which has one loss. What a game this was, Dan.
Yeah, this game was really fun to watch. I mean, NFC East games, they are always very exciting, kind of no matter how good or bad the teams are, they sort of play up or down to each other. It's just the way that division works. Eagles continue to roll, and the Cowboys, they have some real questions. I mean, I think the big takeaway for me with this Cowboys offense is the lack of a running game. Ezekiel Elliott, he left. Tony Pollard is the guy, and just we've had almost no production from Tony Pollard all year. Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, departed for the Chargers. I mean, that's a whole nother thing we could spend a half hour talking about is the Kellen Moore offense with the Chargers. But Mike McCarthy, when Kellen Moore was leaving, was like, oh, we need to get back to the basics. We need to run the ball more and yada yada yada. But like, there's just no efficiency in the running game. I mean, yesterday, Tony Pollard had 12 carries for only 51 yards. That's, terrible. And that just leads to the defense is not going to respect your run. They're going to drop more defensive backs into coverage. And now, Dak is, 3-step drop and he's looking and just nobody's open. So the Cowboys offense, I feel like just has to get back to basics. And, I don't want to sound like, a hard-nosed old school football guy. We got to run the ball to set up the pass type of thing, but you have to have some sort of running attack to, at least keep the defense honest. So Dallas is going to be in for a long season unless they can figure out that run game, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing I want to talk about because Tony Pollard obviously was someone that everyone sort of thought of as he's the number one guy. He's better than Ezekiel Elliott, which I think he still is, but you still seen that guy. I mean, he was looking at the stats. He was 16th in the league when it comes to rushing yards last season, 2022, with 1,007. And then to the touchdowns, he was 10th in the league with 9 touchdowns. But looking at his rankings for this season, it's a lot worse. So at the moment, looking at his rushing yards, let me get once the page size to load, it will tell me. Sorry, mate, it's frozen my screen.
It's okay. He only has 474 rushing yards in the season.
See, which is past
That's on 120 attempts. So he's averaging about 4 yards per carry, which is decent, but doesn't tell the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, mentioned there, 16th in the league when it comes to rushing yards, and he's only had 2 touchdowns on the ground this year, which has him at the moment looking at his standing joint 30th when it comes to touchdowns. So I think that's down to what we saw it was Juju a few years ago, where players are the number 2 or number 3 in their position. They excel because they're not the number 1 guy. They're not targeted by defenses. They're not double covered. But when you see a move from 2 to 1, most times, 9 times out of 10, you'll see these players, they'll struggle ultimately. We saw it with Juju. We're seeing it right now with Tony Pollard, and even further away from just Pollard, I think the offense in general, having that two running back threat of Ezekiel Elliott and Pollard was one of their biggest strengths last year on offense. Probably their biggest strength on offense last year was being able to change between Ezekiel Elliott and Pollard. Use Pollard further up in the field. And then when you get down to the red zone, use Ezekiel Elliott, pound the ground, get that touchdown. But now it's just him, and I think we're seeing ultimately these struggles. And I think Kellen Moore being away affects that as well. But I've got to say as well, Dak Prescott had maybe his best game in years. I think he was really, really good. I mean, he's been a victim of a lot of media criticism, fans criticism. He's not been himself pretty much since he came back from that injury. But I thought this game he was brilliant. He was finding different guys like Jake Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, times Brandon Cook, Michael Gallup. I thought he was finding different guys, and I thought he was really, really impressive in this game. And I think that he was really unlucky that he's playing against the Eagles, because I think most games they'd have won that. I think it was just down to what was it ended up being a brilliant defense. I mean, they had 1.5 sacks from Brandon Graham. Josh Sweat got a sack. I think Jalen Carter got a sack as well. A lot of players got involved in that defense. I think ultimately he was just unlucky to be against a great team like the Eagles.
Yeah, we can't, we can't hide behind the curtains the fact that this Eagles defensive line is amazing. We can talk for a little while about San Francisco versus Philadelphia, who has a better defensive line right now after, all the trade deadline moves. But, Dak was sacked 5 times on Sunday, and, that's going to make it really hard for him to produce when he is under pressure, under duress so much. Now, I don't want to say, this is a Cowboys problem, offensive line problem. Like, the Eagles just have such a great defensive line, and credit to them for investing in the draft over and over and over again, and just making the right picks and getting the right players. Jalen Carter is probably going to be the steal of last year's draft, because I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but he fell out of the top 8 because of the whole car accident issue, him lying about where he was, this or that. And the Eagles saw that and they said, like, listen, we have enough leaders in the locker room. We have enough guys like Jalen Hurts, enough guys like, Kelsey, that we can get this kid in. Because remember, he's still young. He's still 20, 21 years old. He's a kid, basically. Get him in. We could teach him the right way to go about life, the right way to conduct himself. And, I don't want to, be like overreactionary, but he's already on like an Aaron Donald type career path with the way he's performing, especially next year when they give him, more snaps and a bigger role in the defense. So I don't want to sit here and say the Cowboys offensive line did a terrible job, because it is a big ask to block a line like the one the Philadelphia Eagles have.
Yeah, but I think he just fits in straight away, and just it's almost now become a bit like a Baltimore in terms of defensive DNA. It's just part of defensive greatness is just part of that DNA in the Eagles team. I think same as Baltimore, and I think he's just fitted in straight away. And Harry Roseman continues to be the best GM in the whole NFL. Before we do go, we're going to start this new segment, because it's getting to that part of the season where you can make these predictions. First of all, who would you pick for MVP if you were voting? And also then, what would be your Super Bowl matchup if the Super Bowl was tomorrow?
Ooh, MVP. I know they hate giving back-to-back awards, but I'm going to go with Mahomes. I think that the Chiefs are about to turn it on down the stretch. I think he's got a lot of young wide receivers that he's like Rashee Rice, that he's developing that chemistry with, and I think we're going to see the Kansas City offense take a big step forward. Down the stretch. As far as Super Bowl matchup, I'll give you one better. I'll give you the championship games and the Super Bowl.
Okay,
and AFC Championship game is going to be the Chiefs over the Ravens. The NFC Championship game is going to be the 49ers over the Eagles. and we're going to get a rematch of the Super Bowl a few years ago, and the Chiefs will defeat the 49ers at the end of the year to win another Super Bowl title.
Interesting. Well, I might as well give my one while I'm here. MVP, I'm still giving to Christian McCaffrey. I just think that he's been so good for them, and obviously, if he scores this weekend, he sets a record of most consecutive games. Already tied for the record, so I think he's had a season where he's made that much of an impact. And then Super Bowl wise, I'll do my games as well. So I'm going to go for the Bengals beat the Chiefs. I think it's going to be that kind of rivalry where every year, like a bit like Manning Brady back in the day, I think it's going to be every year they'll be playing each other at some point. But I do think the Jets could get as far as the divisional round if Rodgers does come back, which we think he might do. And then on the NFC, I think the Eagles beat the Niners and go back again. I just think that the injuries are just a bit worrying for me. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to call the audible. Niners beat the Eagles. And then I think, sounds crazy, I just said they're going to lose, but I think the Niners are going to beat the Bengals. I think the Bengals will once again suffer the Super Bowl at the hands of the Niners. But hopefully it'll be Dolphins Bears, but I don't think that's going to be possible.
Hopefully the AFC Championship game will be Dolphins Browns, right?
Oh, that would be good. I mean, it's in Cleveland, or I could get down there, meet you there. You come down from New York, and we can watch the game together.
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
Sounds good. Well, that is the end of the Across the Pod podcast, our Week 9 review. Now, I'm not sure whether we will have a Week 10 stuff, because I'm away traveling next week, and I don't know whether I'll have time to do a podcast, but I may do, I may not. So that's up in the air. But either way, we'll be back for Week 11 stuff regardless. But yeah, thank you, Dan, for coming on, first of all. So those who haven't yet found your work, what can we look forward to on Dynasty Nerds in the next few weeks?
So you can find me on Twitter at DanT_NFL. I've actually had to step back my workload from Dynasty Nerds. Unfortunately, I have a baby coming in a couple months, so
congratulations!
It's time. Thank you. It's time to switch on dad mode. But I guarantee you, as we're getting closer to the draft, you can watch out for my player analysis, my draft takes, and then our NFL draft live stream once again on draft weekend.
Fantastic. So we will put this post out on socials. If you do find it on Twitter, do give him a follow, and you can find all stuff fantasy related and Browns related on his channel. But this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our Week 9 review. I've been your host, Andy. This has been Dan, and we will see you guys next time.